don't think that I got the words for Priscilla's bread and butter pickles. What I did was drain the cucumbers and onions that have been sitting in the brine. I put them into this container here, which is full of the brine, and they have now cooked until the whole thing is boiling. And now it is time to pack them into jars. I have hot pickles, or proto pickles. In other words, they will be pickles in about 4 to 6 weeks. I have lids. I have a lid lifter. Now, a lid lifter is simply a little plastic stick with a magnet on the end. It allows you to get your lids out of the water without burning your fingers. Of course, these two are going to stick together because I'm trying to demonstrate this. But under normal circumstances, they don't stick together. There we go. There we go, perfect. I have these. They need a 1/4-inch headspace. I have purchased, in my old age, the fancy little stick that they sell to measure 1/4-inch headspaces. So what that means is you're going to take your jar, you're going to, of course, I don't have what I want because that would be too easy. I'm going to pack these guys down in here. And then I'm going to use a ladle to pour some hot brine in here until I have a 1/4-inch headspace. And the point of this is to make sure that you have enough brine in each jar to make it safe and work right and all that kind of stuff. You can use this end of your measuring thing to hook around in there and get the bubbles out. And this is not deep enough in brine. I know it isn't. Yep, there we go. Now, two things. I like to use either a clean paper towel or a clean rag. I dip it in the hot water and I clean the upper rim of the jar. What that does is it means there's nothing in the way. Lid goes on. Finger tight and snug tight, not wimpy tight. And then it goes into the canning kettle. Now, I just realized I don't have my rack in there.
A few moments later.
I'm an airhead today. Usually, I've been doing pressure canning lately. And that means I have a whole different set of equipment. I'm going to do two jars at a time here. They're pretty warm. And they're going to go right in the hot water, so I'm not concerned about sanitation. Sterilization will happen when they get, well, the jars are sterile to start with. The brine is hot. It's acidified. All the things you're supposed to do. The thing I try to do on a regular basis when I'm doing this is make sure that some of the stuff from the bottom comes up, because especially in a slightly too small container like this, the mustard seeds and stuff tend to be in the bottom. It's great, except you want some in each one of the jars so that they will properly flavor the pickles. And I'm just going to keep doing this till I run out of pickles. I was thinking while I was taking a break waiting for this to be ready to can. Wonder how many times I've made this. How many batches? This is our first batch this year, but in previous years, man, I made gazillions of batches of this stuff. This is one of our standard bread and butter pickles. Whoops. That's why you make sure you clean your little rims. For certain types of things like tomato sauces and stuff like that, I always use a funnel, and I actually have a funnel over here. But sometimes when you're packing pickles in and stuff like that, for me a funnel just gets in the way more than anything else. It's great for chilies and liquids and things like that, but not so good for pickles. I like to be able to thump them in there a little bit. See, if you get a piece of mustard seed or something like that on the rim, your lids are not going to seal. Now, if your lid doesn't seal, it doesn't mean you have to throw your pickles away. It does mean you have to put them in the fridge. And they'll be fine as a fresh pickle. They'll probably last for a couple of weeks at least, maybe longer. But they're not a keeper pickle that you can stick on the shelf in the pantry. And our goal here is keeper pickles. Things that we can have 6 months from now in the dead of winter when we're living off brassicas and things frozen in the freezer. Now, if you've never canned before, I seriously suggest that you do a little reading, get yourself a Ball Blue Book, and understand what you're trying to do. Henry's been canning since he was an itty bitty kid, you know, helping with the process. My mother did not can, but I was self-taught. Before I met Henry, I had learned to do that sort of stuff because I was already making yogurt and all kinds of other stuff too. I was part of the Back to the Land movement in the 60s and 70s, mostly 70s. I couldn't do anything before the 70s. I had to graduate from high school first. But once I had a little bit of freedom of movement, I was busy learning how to do all kinds of amazing things. Don't hesitate to pull stuff out if you need to. You don't want stuff to be too high. You want that 1/4-inch headspace. They came up with that rule for a reason. It works best depending on, you know, it'll tell you what kind of headspace you need depending on what you're canning. See, this had this rim here because I made a mess. Has a whole ton of spices and stuff on it. It would have really made a mess and it would not have sealed. So, important stuff. Canning is not hard, but it does require attention to detail, following the rules, because if you don't follow the rules, it won't be safe. You know, pickles are kind of hard to botch. They might not be as tasty as you want them to be or something like that, but they're highly unlikely to be unsafe. I add a little bit more water in here. Yep, I need to add more water. It's too low. Needs to have an inch of water over the top of my canning jars. A lot of times I'll actually have a kettle of hot water or something here, and that's the ideal way to do it. Just was not that organized today. I'm going to blame it on the rainstorm. Rainstorms are such an anomaly here that I'm going to blame it on the rainstorm. Okay, got me an inch of water over the top of that. Now I have some pickles left in here, just a little bit. Going to have one more jar of that. Won't go in here though. I have to wait for this. This is one of our older ones. It's a little ratty. That's okay. Information is still good. So what I'm doing now is I'm waiting for the water to get hot enough. I'm adjusting it for an altitude of 3,001 feet to 6,000 feet, which means I add an additional 10 minutes. So this will get processed for, I figured it out before, 20 minutes, I believe it is. Yeah, 20 minutes. Which is, because it's usually 10 minutes for bread and butter pickles. So you wait until this is boiling, and then you start timing it. See, it talks about all the things you need to know, lids and bands, prep and everything else. And you have to stay up on that sort of stuff because the new lids do not need to be boiled, the old ones did. You clean the jar rings, the same thing as always. Yeah, you got to cover by 1 to 2 inches. Put the can or lid in place, adjust the heat to medium-high, bringing the water to a rolling boil, and then start timing it. And then you let it cool for 5 minutes before you take them out of there. Now, when you take your jars out, do not, with a capital do not, set them on the counter. You will break them. You need to put them on a towel on the counter to insulate the jars from the counter. Otherwise, you could make one heck of a mess. And when it's been cooking long enough, till it comes to a boil, I start timing it. It gets cooked for 20 minutes. Et voila, we have pickles. And I will do the same thing with this little guy in the next batch. So I was a little discombobulated today. I'll be the first one to say that. Haven't water bath canned in a while because I've been pressure canning, and that's a whole nother set of tools. So I sort of forgot some of the things I needed. I need to move this over though. I don't want to melt the box. But as long as you have your instruction book that you can fall back on, you're good. Follow the rules. It'll be safe. Life will be good. The pickles will be delicious. They probably won't taste the same each time. They're homemade. Just like a homemade loaf of bread is a little bit different each time. Not yet. Watch pot never boils. So I hope this inspires you. Get yourself a Ball Bull book. Go to a couple of good canning sites. Do not, when you are starting to learn to can, listen to random people. Be careful about listening to grandma. There is a video on YouTube about an Italian grandmother making tomato sauce. And I watched that with the utmost horror, is the best way to put it. She's obviously using a commercial kitchen. My guess is she knows somebody who has a kitchen or something like that, probably a family member, and she makes this monster batch of tomato sauce. Totally what they call off schedule. In other words, not following the current rules of sanitation. I really don't recommend that when you start. Follow the rules. They're not hard. They may seem picky, but they're there for a reason. Later on, you can decide what you want to do. But I see an awful lot of people they'll say, well, I'm canning off schedule. And I'll watch what they do and I'm like, okay, I'm not going to do that because it's just not safe. There are other people who do quote unquote can off schedule that I feel their sanitation and their methods are safe enough. I used to have a federal license to can. The same kind of license that the guys who work at Del Monte and places like that have to get. So I have a concept of what's safe and what's not. Yes, it's expired, but science has not changed dramatically. If anything, it's gotten a little pickier about some of the things we have to do because some of the bugs have gotten a little harder to kill. But the vast majority of the things you need to know are in something like a Ball Blue Book. Just pick a recipe, follow it. I'll have to try and find, I don't remember the name of the website, but I'll find it and I'll have Henry put it in the show notes. There's a website, it's a governmental website, and it's got all the health research in it in terms of how to can this, that, and the other thing. But it's not hard to use. You just basically look at whatever your fruit or vegetable is, and it'll tell you what's the safe way to prepare it. How long it needs to be cooked for, if you leave it high altitude, what you need to do, all that sort of stuff. Super simple, simple recipes, not complicated at all. We're getting there. Not to a roiling boil yet, but we're getting there. So don't be afraid of canning, but do follow the rules, especially when you're first starting. And be careful about listening to some of the stories that Grandma told. Some of those are a little less than current health standards. So stay healthy. Be sure to like, subscribe, hit that notification bell, and come back in 4 to 6 weeks and see what Henry has to say about these pickles. Hopefully he'll like them a lot. He has before, so there's no reason he shouldn't. And until next time, we'll see you. Bye.